I'm Danny, and this is the Scream Princess podcast. Hello there, welcome to another episode of the Scream Princess podcast. Today I've got director and producer of projects like Ibiza Undead, Punch, and Midnight Peep Show, Andy Edwards on the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I've just got back from the Cannes Film Festival, so I'm a little bit tired and a little bit sunburnt and a little bit alcohol poisoned, but
That's
apart
okay.
from that, all
That,
good.
that's what happens at Cannes.
Mhm.
Well, I told you they wouldn't be good.
Yep, there we go. We can't have a horror podcast without a cat.
Yeah, familiars, witches familiars. She's actually the naughty one. The boy one's better behaved, so we'll see what happens.
I mean, that's quite often how it is.
I
The
don't know.
girls, the girls look sweet, but they're the worst
Well,
behaved.
that's it. She's got such an innocent looking face, and she's actually a demon, I think, possibly for the best. I think I bought a demon instead of a kitten. But no, she's fine, really. She's fine, really. So how was Cannes?
Yeah, it was good actually. I mean, before I went there, there was all this kind of talk of like Trump's tariffs,
Right.
which made obviously all the conversations quite tricky.
Hmm.
But luckily, everybody kind of just, I think the general assumption was that he'd forgotten about them already.
Right, just ignore
Uh,
him.
and so just ignore him. Let's just carry on with business as usual and hope he doesn't genuinely put 100% tariff on movies because then
Yeah.
we're all in trouble.
I mean, that would literally kill the industry for,
Yes,
you
yes, it
know,
would. So that's why we were all forgetting it.
yeah, no. And
Sorry.
I'm sure he's forgotten. So he'll have something else on his agenda by now. Oh, there's your one. Who's
There's
this?
my cat. He must have heard your cat.
Oh,
Why did he want to get involved?
oh. Now you're
Yes,
like the Bond villain with your
yeah, I'm giving Bond villain vibes. If I don't keep stroking him like this to keep him still, he'll climb on the keyboard. If
ah. Oh, I
suddenly
think the
knows
boy
what's going to
ones,
happen.
my boy one's got zoomies now. I can see him like in my peripheral and it could all go wrong, but we'll see. We'll see. So horror. Because I mean, we've known each other for a really long time now, and I've always known you to do horror. So obviously, same industry. Did you always set out to kind of do horror, or did you kind of
Um,
have to do all sorts, and this is kind of where you ended up?
um, Not from a very young age. The first film that I saw that made me want to be a filmmaker was Star Wars when I was about four. And I became obsessed with Star Wars as anybody, any children of a certain generation did, and had all the figures and stuff. But I also used to get all like the making of books. So this was pre-DVD, so there were no kind of making of commentaries or anything. So you used to get a book that used to show you. So not only did I, want to be Luke Skywalker and go into space, I also wanted to work on Star Wars. And because it looked almost as incredible as the thought of being in space
Mm,
was the thought of creating these worlds, spaceships and creatures.
yeah.
But obviously to a kid from the suburbs of Birmingham, it felt a very long way away and an impossible dream, really. And then it was probably early teens, and I started going to the video shop and hiring videos out. And that's when I got into horror. And me and my mates, we'd hire out things like Evil Dead and the Peter Jackson movies, Brain Dead and Bad Taste. And that kind of showed me that, I love those films, but they've also got this kind of homemade quality. And suddenly I was like, oh, actually, that feels more achievable than spaceships and huge studios. Evil Dead was people messing around in the woods with their mates, and the camera was on a skateboard, and that made me go, okay, actually, not only do I love horror films, but I think making horror films is the way to go because you can just muck around with your mates in the woods and some fake blood,
That's
and
it.
I'm still doing that, you know.
Still
But
doing it today, but
yeah.
not just in the woods. I mean, you went off to Ibiza or Ibiza. I'm
Mhm.
never really sure how you pronounce it to shoot your zombie. Is it a zombie film?
it is zombies. So Ibiza and Dead was my first feature film, and that was, yeah, zombies in Ibiza, shot mainly on location in Ibiza. And that was an experience. I mean, it was my first feature film, um, but it was like making a film on a club 1830s holiday.
Right.
Um, I don't know if you've ever been to Ibiza, but
No.
it's kind of the whole place is, sorry, my cat is in front of the screen. Um, the whole place is geared up to one thing and one thing alone,
Yeah.
uh, which is we can swear, can't we?
Yes.
Um, Getting fucked basically, in all possible ways. So trying to make a film in that environment was quite tricky.
Yeah.
Like people just sleep all day, get up at night. So it fit the theme of the film very well, but actually physically trying to get anything done was very
Were you
difficult.
partying while you were filming? Was this like was it one big party or was
I
it
mean, I wasn't.
you weren't?
The rest of the cast and crew were, and some of them got themselves into all kinds of scrapes and misadventures. And
Amazing.
I'd get the updates in the morning, when the cast and crew turned up. Who hasn't slept? Who slept with who? And yeah, just
Did you have the fear the whole time that like this film wasn't going to get made? Like somebody's
uh,
not coming to work today?
oh, very much so. I mean, I think you have that to a certain extent on all movies, until you see the DVD in Asda or see it on the list on Amazon, of whether it's actually going to happen because a lot of things can go wrong. But with that one, yeah,
I think
um,
when you've got a young cast and crew in a party
yeah,
situation,
yeah.
you need to kind of make films with old people who don't want to party anymore and, you know,
Exactly,
turn up to
exactly.
work.
Or out in the woods where they can't do any
Out in the
trouble.
woods where they can't disappear. Yeah.
In San Antonio, one of kind of Europe's premier party cities, and you have, a cast of essentially kind of 20 somethings and a crew of 20 somethings.
Yeah.
It's a low budget film, so part of the attraction was we spend 3 weeks in Ibiza.
Yeah.
Um, but then yeah, it was madness. So, we tried to capture some of that madness on camera. But yeah,
It's
it
great
was
that you, I mean, a first feature film to actually get the budget together to go and shoot it in Ibiza. I mean, I know you've done parts of anthologies before, so you'd kind of had things that were packaged and released as feature films, but that was your first like actual directorial debut of a feature.
Yeah, I'd done a bunch of short films called House Party of the Dead, which were all zombie films, and that's what led to Ibiza and Dead. I mean, the first one was literally we shot it in one evening in my flat, and we used ketchup for blood. Uh, so because I didn't know what I was doing, and the whole thing's about 5 minutes, but the whole premise was there was a zombie apocalypse outside, and we were having a house party in our flat, and we genuinely did have a house party. We got drunk, we made a movie. One of the zombies was like crawling up the stairs, and I was like, "Oh, that's brilliant, brilliant zombie acting." And the guy was like, "No, I genuinely can't walk. I'm so drunk." Um,
That's
so
method acting at its finest.
absolutely. So we did that. And then we ended up doing five of those, five short House Party of the Dead films. By the final one, we had maybe 30, 40 zombie extras,
Right.
proper makeup artists on set. So that was essentially my film school, really.
It's actually amazing how quickly from going to doing, from doing something where you completely have no clue what you're doing and you're just making it up as you go along to kind of learning very quickly. It's amazing how fast you can learn whilst making a film. Because I always say that when I did Serial Caller, I learned so much because I was winging it. I didn't really
Oh
know
yeah,
what I
oh
was
yeah,
doing. They were like, "Can you do a budget?" Yeah. Can you have it tomorrow? Of course. Like I had no clue, but I would just learn on the go. And then afterwards, you like step back and you're like, well, I now know loads of things that I wouldn't have done next time. Like you've learned what not to do, and you do kind of
okay.
learn things that you would do. So yeah,
Yeah, every film you
doing.
come off with things that worked and you're going to do again, and
Mm,
things that really didn't work that you'd never do again. And crew members you've worked with that you'd work with again, and crew members you maybe wouldn't work with, and yeah,
yeah.
every film is a learning
I
experience.
think
So
that's how people really build their teams as well, isn't it? Like two people do tend to work with the same people again and again. It's because you find people that you can work well with, and you know they'll turn up and they'll do the job to like the best of their ability, and like you don't have to worry that they're not going to be there. So obviously that's why people build the teams they build and kind of work with people
Absolutely.
over and over.
On a horror film, you're probably going to be, at some point you're going to be in the woods and it's going to be raining and it's going to be at night and somebody's going to be half naked and covered in blood. And then
Yes, that
then you
has
know
been
the
me
people that
before.
you can trust.
I've been there.
I'm sure you have on several occasions. So yeah, you learn the people you can trust, and that is cast and crew.
Mm,
And you learn the people who maybe, aren't cut out for that world
yeah.
of low budget indie filmmaking.
Yeah. So after Ibiza Undead, was it Midnight Peep Show or was it Punch? Which way around did they go?
Um, Midnight Peep Show was before
Right.
Punch. So actually in between then, I did a film called Graphic Desires, which was the first thing that I produced, and that's ultra low budget erotic thriller that we actually shot during COVID. Because COVID, all my projects fell apart.
Hmm.
That I was working on. So I tried to think of something that I could do in lockdown that didn't require loads of people, didn't require fancy locations. So it was largely just set indoors to occasionally three people not wearing very much clothes, having this thriller. Um, so we did that, and then that led on to Midnight Peep Show, because Jake and Anthony, who were the other sort of co-creators of
Hmm.
Midnight Peep Show, they sort of saw that and were like, okay, we're doing this kind of erotic horror anthology. We think your style would really fit.
Right.
And
So
that,
then that's how they got you involved. I always see you at events. You're like a little triple act, like the three of
yeah,
you, the three
yeah. I mean,
egos.
obviously we did sort of tour together with Midnight Peep Show because Midnight Peep Show did a bunch of festivals. But yeah, Jake and Anthony, so that's Jake West, who most horror fans will know, things like Evil Aliens and Doghouse, and then Anthony Hales, who did a film called Werewolf Santa, one called Advent, which have all played Fright Fest. So I knew those guys from Fright Fest, from the
So
horror
he really
circuit.
likes Christmas
Yeah,
or
Anthony
doesn't
loves
like Christmas.
Christmas. Yeah, Anthony really loves horror Christmas films.
Right.
So he's made about five horror Christmas
I'll have
films,
to
I think.
bring him on for a festive edition.
Yeah, definitely. When it's Christmas, get him on. You can both dress as like Santa,
Yes.
and make it
Why not?
and he can talk to you about all his Christmas horror films. Um, so I knew those guys kind of socially.
Mm.
Then yeah, they put together this script, um, and it was an anthology, and they had the wraparound written, and they had the two stories that bookend it, but they didn't have the middle story.
Mhm.
So they said, can you come up with a middle story that you'd like to do? And Midnight Peep Show, for those who haven't seen it, it's pretty dark. It's some pretty dark stuff. It's about sexual fantasies that go wrong, not the ones that go right. um so I kind of thought, well, we're quite dark. Let's come up with something that's a bit more light-hearted.
Mhm.
You don't want it all kind of the same tone. So it starts dark. You get a little relief for 20 minutes in the middle before plunging into Jake's one, which has got chainsaws and God knows what. So yeah, I came up with this idea called Fuck, Marry, Kill, and sent it to Anthony and Jake. They loved it, and then yeah, we went off and made it. And the interesting way we made that is we wanted it to feel very much as a cohesive film.
Mhm.
So we used the same crew and the same DOP and everything. So it kind of looks all the same and
Mhm.
feels the same. Um, like those kind of old Amicus
Yeah, I
films.
think that's a problem that some anthologies have is they're all so different that they look like they've just been thrown together without kind of a lot of thought. But obviously when they're
Yeah.
written and produced together.
Yeah. So we had, things that little characters and things that linked
Mhm.
them, did feel like you were watching one whole movie. And
Yeah.
yeah, there are some anthologies where, the charm is that you don't know what's next, that it could be
Mm.
something completely different and from a different country and shot on a completely different
Yeah.
camera, different style. But also, yeah, sometimes they do feel like I'm
Yeah.
just watching six short films,
Yeah.
just
That's the
slapped
thing.
together in a random order.
So I'm a big
So
fan of the Trick or Treat, the Halloween one,
yes,
which is
which
like
does that,
so
yeah.
well thought out. And I think
Yeah.
like Midnight Peak Show's got that kind of
Yeah, that's what
vibe.
we wanted to do with that is, yeah, make
It
it,
feels like you're watching a film rather than three and a wraparound.
yeah. So that's exactly what we wanted to do with Midnight Peep Show. And yeah, that is now out on streaming and
Where can people
hopefully
watch it?
that's it's on Amazon at the moment.
Right.
Potentially coming to Shudder at some point soon, but
Cool.
we're not sure. We're just waiting to find out. But yes, if you search up Midnight Peep Show, yeah, it's on Amazon and Apple and
Right. Okay.
all of those kind of places.
The usual places.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Punch,
Yeah. So
which is if anybody hasn't seen Punch yet, it's the backdrop that Andy's got behind him right now.
no, that's
Is
not
that
that.
not? Oh no, is that
That's just
not?
the
That's
Rumpelstiltskin.
Rumpelstiltskin. That's the
That's
next one, isn't it?
that's the
You've just
next one
finished
we're
that one.
talking about. Yeah. So Punch was next, and Punch was it for those who haven't seen it, it's a seaside slasher movie. Um, and that came about because I wanted to. Sorry, that's going in again. Um, I wanted to do a very British slasher movie because I
Mhm.
love slasher movies, but we don't really have that many over here. Um, it's very much associated with American cinema. So I was trying to think of something that was very British, but then we could kind of fit the slasher formula around it. And I had some terrible ideas, like he wore a Union Jack suit and a baseball hat, and all of this kind of stuff. Um, but then it wasn't until I kind of combined it with another idea that I had that I wanted to shoot something in a seaside town in winter.
Mhm.
Really like that kind of melancholy vibe that you
Yeah.
get from
Well, I
seaside
live
town.
in a seaside town now, and it's been a very cold winter.
Yeah. And it's that cold, windswept, and the idea of this place that is, for a few months of year filled with like children having a great old time, and then there's certain times when everything's just shuttered
Mhm.
and bleak,
Yes.
and yeah, and that kind of is quite a creepy environment, I think.
Mm.
When I put Slasher in a seaside town together, then Mr. Punch just kind of popped up
Yeah.
like a little cheeky puppet.
Yeah.
Uh, I was like, well, he's perfect. He's he's already pretty creepy. He already beats his wife and kills children and attacks
Mhm.
policemen. He's very easy to turn into a slasher killer. Uh,
Yeah.
so he did.
I'm
And
surprised actually
he
that
came down for a little day as well and
yes,
played a little role in it.
yes, the barmaid. But I was
And
surprised actually that Punch and Judy, obviously it's like a British kind of institution, and it hasn't actually been banned. I don't know if it's as bad as it, used to be. Obviously, when you go to a fun fair or years gone by, you could go and watch the Punch and Judy show. But I actually, a few years ago, went to this kind of kids' farm at an Easter, and they had a Punch and Judy show. And I don't know if it was as brutal, but there was definitely a bit of brutality still.
yeah, I mean, kids do, I think they're a bit freaked out by the sort of the voices and the look of him, but he's going around smacking people on the head.
Yeah,
And I've got an 8-year-old son, and he loves going around smacking people on the head.
yeah.
He thinks casual violence is hilarious.
Yeah,
Uh,
kids do. Well, then we had Whack-A-Day, didn't we? And that was
oh
like
yeah, that was
Timmy
yeah, whack
Mallet bopping
on
people
the
on the
head.
head with a
Yeah,
mallet. So
maybe we could do a Timmy Mallet horror film.
yeah,
It's mallet, and it's a real mallet.
yeah. Oh,
This guy in big
wonder if
glasses.
we could get him to do it.
I reckon actually he's not doing much these days.
He's cycling around. So I follow him on Instagram, and he's cycling around Ireland at the moment, and he's cycled around Scotland. He's like raising money for a charity or something.
Okay, well,
But
yeah, let's approach him with an idea. He just goes
I
round.
mean, he's a British
You get the
institution.
word wrong. He plays that game with you, doesn't he? Where you
Yeah.
have to word association. If you get it wrong, bang, you're dead.
Yes. It's like Mallet's Mallet crossed with the Squid Games somehow.
Yeah, yeah. Like you're in a basement. It's like Saw. There's two
Yeah.
of you. One of you walks out alive, and
Yeah.
the other gets a mallet to the head.
There you go. Next film
There you
written.
go. There you go.
Is
Horror
Punch
film
released
ideas.
now?
Yeah, so Punch is currently in the UK. You can see it on Paramount Plus.
Right.
In the US, you can see it on Tubi. Um, it's all it's complicated these days.
Yeah.
Like it used to be like my film's out on DVD, and now you're like, where can I see it? Well, it's on Mubi and it's on Tubi and it's on Booby and it was on Squizzle and now it's on Wuzzle and
Yes.
all of these all of these weird things.
Yeah. But you
Um,
actually managed to get them released pretty quickly. As
yeah,
I've
I
seen
mean,
sometimes that can take a while, but I think yours kind of tend to be wrapped up and released pretty fast.
yeah, I mean, I try. I mean, a lot of that is kind of financial. I hope need to get some money back for them.
Mm.
So, um, the quicker we can get them out there, the better, really. Um, and so Punch played at Fright Fest in the summer,
Mhm.
and that kind of gives you a deadline, really. If you're
Yeah.
aiming for a particular festival, you're like, so that was its premiere. Then it did a little seaside tour, so we played Horror on Sea, of course,
Yeah.
in Southend. We played Screams by the Sea, which is in Bournemouth. Be Beside the Sea, which is Southport. Where
I
else?
love that you did a
Hayden
seaside festival tour.
Yeah, we did a seaside festival tour. Yeah, played a couple of inland places, but mainly when I was looking at Film Freeway, going, where can I send this film? I was like, yeah, these, and obviously, you know, Horror on Sea, which I go to quite a lot, and or Danny Thompson Fest, as it often
Yes.
is when I go and watch
Well,
a
I don't know
marathon.
if I'll be in anything next year because I haven't really done. I've done one film this year, so we'll see.
You're
And
too
I don't know
far
if
away.
that will be submitted, so we'll see.
You're too far away from Essex.
I'm quite far away. Well, I'm not that far away. I think it's like in British terms, like in America, you'll
Oh
be in
yeah,
the same
yeah.
state. You drive 5 hours and you're in the same state. Like in England, it's like I've moved to the northeast and I'm like on Mars, but it's only
Oh yeah.
4.5 hours.
Exactly. And yeah, well, yeah, I live in London. If somebody moves to South London, I'm in North London, someone moves to South
Oh
London,
yeah, you don't
people,
want to cross the
well,
river.
guess I won't see you then, like you've moved to Australia or something. Just
Yeah.
bye.
No,
Uh,
it's quite nice. It's a peaceful life up here, but I like coming back when there's events. So I'll be coming back for Dark Fest in November. And then I'm back next month just for a quick signing for something. But yeah, it's nice to come back, but it's only 4.5 hours. It's not like the worst drive in the world.
and and the thing with Punch is I'm currently writing Punch 2 at the moment.
True.
Because Punch is hopefully going to be a franchise. I mean, that's kind of
Amazing.
what I had in the back of my head when I was doing it, because what you're trying to do when you're making a slasher movie, what you're really trying to do is do the iconic killer.
Hmm.
You're trying to find, the mask or the method of killing that is memorable.
Hmm.
Because there's some good slasher films out there, but I can't remember what the mask is, just a spooky face or something.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the guy's called or anything, but the ones that stand the test of time and are still going now, your Freddy's and your Jasons and your and Art the Clown's the new one. You get
Yes.
instantly recognizable,
Hmm.
and you can go and put them anywhere. And the dream is punch 10, punch in
Punch
space.
10. I was actually having a chat on a podcast yesterday about franchises. And why is it you think that horror franchises do seem to do so well? Because obviously, years later, we've still got Halloween movies being made, and Scream's made a comeback. I Know What You Did Last Summer is now, coming back. Final Destination's back. Like, why do you think that they really keep going?
I mean, I mean, I think there's an artistic reason and a commercial reason. And the commercial reason is obvious. It's something that makes money.
Mm,
Especially, in America, film is a business.
mhm,
Film can be an expensive hobby, um, as opposed to business at times. But America, whereas it's a business, obviously you've made one thing that did well, let's make 10 more of them. That's a sort of, capitalistic view. But I think looking at it in a kind of artistic way, the whole point of horror is that they are campfire stories that can be, told again and again and again with, a different spin on them. And, the beauty of horror is that the horror is never truly vanquished.
mm.
So even at the end of a slasher movie, the final girl has won, the killer is dead, but then by part two, the killer is not dead. The killer.
Yeah,
So it kind of leans into the horror that you can't truly kill these things,
yeah.
you know. And obviously, sometimes that causes problems with, kind of believability. If you've made your killer a non-supernatural human,
Mm.
and then you're like, by part 10, what is he now?
Why isn't he dead?
Or you do it like Scream, where it's a different person behind the
Mm.
mask each time. So there's always a way around it. But yeah, it is this idea that evil can never be truly killed. It can only be postponed. It can only be, cast away for a certain amount of time before it returns.
Why do you think the fans keep coming back? Because I feel like when people are a fan of a particular like horror franchise, they're just gonna love it forever.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is you just love that character and you just want to see them come back. You love how Freddy kills people or how Art the Clown kills people. You just want to see them come back. And then it becomes almost like a sort of a comfort thing, which is very, very, very weird to say about obviously what happens in some of these movies. But people do have comfort horrors, and something that maybe once upon a time really, really scared you. Maybe something you watched when you were 12 and it
Mhm.
scared the pants off of you. Now you're older, that could be your comfort movie now because you've seen it 16 times, and so the scares don't get you anymore. And so you're in that kind of comfortable place. You can enjoy it and go, once upon a time, I was really scared of this. And now it has no power over me in that kind of way.
I'm still scared of like I'm not scared of clowns, but from the original It, I'm still scared of, the drains. So
Hmm.
where it's like a pavement and then there's just that hole on the side of the pavement, those kinds of drains, I'm still scared of the drains and I don't like walking past them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other flip side of it, that, you can watch a film at 12 and you can still be scared of that
Yeah.
or something from it.
I'm okay with clowns. I actually quite like clowns. I like the
Yeah.
well, maybe then again, actually, I like them because they're creepy. Like I like the
Yeah.
creepiness of a clown.
Yeah, 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 I'm the same. I like the freakiness of, a clown or Mr. Punch. It is
Yeah,
that kind of unsettling,
slightly sinister. And it's because
uncanny
you
valley kind of.
well, because you can't see their expressions, apparently, and that's why
Yeah, the
children are scared of them.
expression.
You can't see
Yeah, the expression is
their
painted on, isn't
expressions.
it?
So you're kind of
It's another kind of mask. And yeah, I remember being pretty scared of, the Tim Curry one when I was
yeah.
young. It was one of the early things that got out from the video shop with my mates. And again, it's where you watch it, and you watch it with a bunch of people, and you're like, oh, we're not scared. And then by the end, you're like 12-year-old boys going, hold me, hold me. Anyone,
Yeah, I was in Canada with my cousins and we were in the basement watching it like it was set up for their TV room for the kids. And so I think I was only 8, so I was too young really. I had to sleep with the light on for about a week.
And I remember watching Poltergeist at one point. I was in my 20s, I was in a house share, and my flatmate came in and he went, turn that off. And I went, I'm watching this, it's Poltergeist, it's brilliant. He went, no, turn it off. I can't be in the same house as this movie.
And
And he'd been apparently, some age, 7, 8 or something.
uh-huh.
He'd asked his parents to stay up and watch TV, and they go, no, 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 no. And one day they went to teach him a lesson. Okay, you're staying up and you're watching Poltergeist, and they made him stay up and watch every frame of it, and it utterly terrified him. And now, yeah, it must have been mid-20s, and he was like, I can't even be in the room with Poltergeist. So obviously I was going, yeah, I'll turn it off for you, mate. Oh, it's back on.
Amazing. Well, we're out of time for our first half, actually. So I'm going to give you a quick break and I'll see you back in part two.
So I will feed my cat, and I will be back in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Scream Princess podcast.
Welcome back to part two of the Scream Princess podcast with Andy Edwards this week. And we left off talking about Punch. But the picture behind you, and I got confused with this, is Rumpelstiltskin. And I only vaguely remember the story of Rumpelstiltskin. I remember having a Ladybird book. And
Oh.
was he something, did he like spin gold threads or something?
Yes, so
Story.
Rumpelstiltskin, he's a Brothers Grimm story, but obviously, goes back, further than that, the sort of ta folk tales.
Mhm.
Um, and Rumpelstiltskin, he spins straw into gold,
That was it.
and he has to spin straw into gold, for this poor miller's daughter who is locked up by the king and made to do this. But in order to spin the straw into gold, Rumpelstiltskin wants various things from her. And the last thing that he asks her for is her firstborn child, which, she has not given birth at the time. So she's like, yeah, sure, saves my life. Um, so she makes this deal with the devil essentially. He spins the straw, and then she does have a child, and he comes to collect. And again, he does another deal where if she can guess his name, she
Right.
gets to keep the child. If she doesn't guess his name, he takes it and eats it or does whatever he will with this baby.
Right.
Um, so that's the Brothers Grimm story, and that's kind of roughly what our story is. So this isn't a sort of Winnie the Pooh-esque thing where it's the character in modern day times,
Hmm.
monster and killing people. We are a proper period folk horror fairy tale world, and we tell the story, um, with a few twists and surprises and changes. Because the original Brothers Grimm story is like a page or two, so you
Right.
know you have to stretch it to 90 minutes by putting some new interesting elements in, and also kind of thinking of character motivations, because
Mm.
the book, it's like every fairy tale, characters just do stuff.
Mm.
He does this, he does this, she does this, and it doesn't say why anybody, wants to spin straw into
Yeah.
gold.
They don't have a backstory.
No backstory, so we've put some backstories in, um, and fleshed out the myth really. And Rumpelstiltskin here, which you can see,
Mm.
uh,
The makeup's
Wreck
incredible.
here. Yeah, so that was a full prosthetics job. That
Right.
was 3 hours in the makeup chair each morning.
Uh,
That was, I mean, it's always fun doing prosthetics and stuff, but
mm.
it's very obviously very time consuming.
Yes.
But what you might do with a sort of normal indie monster movie is hide the monster right to the end.
Yes.
Um, you might hide him right to the end, and maybe you can get away with it's a guy in a costume, guy in a mask. But Rumpelstiltskin, not only is he the monster, he's also got loads of dialogue.
Right.
He's doing the deals, so he's kind of in it from the start, really.
Mm.
So I knew that it couldn't be a guy in a mask, because we've got loads of close-ups of dialogue and he's in the
Hmm.
movie a lot. So, and we don't have the money for Andy Serkis style kind of Gollum CG.
Uh-huh.
So prosthetics seem like the best choice.
Yeah. It does look incredible.
Yeah, so anybody who wants to see it, it came out last month. So it's on all the VOD channels at the moment. So it's on Sky, it's on Apple, it's on Amazon, Google Play. So it's on all of those kind of
Right.
places at the moment. You can rent it for 2.99 or something. Um, and please do.
I'm going to. I really want to watch it.
Because we put a lot of time and care into it. Um, because I decided to make a period movie with prosthetics. We have child actors in it. We have horses.
All of the things you don't really want to do if
All
you want to keep your sanity.
exactly all the things they tell you not to do in a low budget horror movie. Um, I did them
Would you
because
do them again?
well, well, there's two parts to this.
Okay,
The first answer is I did that and went never again.
right.
I am not doing a period thing on that budget ever again. The next time I do it, I want it to be like Bridgerton budget.
Yes.
Robert Eggers is working on to recreate his stuff, Nosferatu budget. And then I had a meeting with the distributors of the film, and they went, "It's selling great. Can you make number two?" It's like, oh. Um, but obviously on the advantages, we do know, we've learned a lot. We were talking in part one about the things that you learn on a film set
Mhm.
and how to do things and how not to do things. And there are little tricks and stuff you can try and do to make your life slightly easier and
Yeah.
cheaper. So anybody mad enough to consider shooting period stuff on a low, if not micro budget, um, there are things you can do. For example, we use some LARPers, cosplayers,
Hmm.
because they have the costumes already. So rather than finding extras and rather than hiring all the costumes for them all,
Hmm.
from whatever period you're doing, you can probably find a group of people who are dressing up as that on a weekend anyway.
So
So
LARP,
go,
for anyone who doesn't know, is live action role play.
yes, so go and find those guys who'd be dressing up as medieval peasants or Vikings or
Just for
allied
fun.
soldiers. And they'd be doing that on a weekend anyway. And
Yeah.
you go, come and be in a film, and we'll feed you, and you can get to show off your costumes and everything.
Yeah.
So them or amateur dramatic societies again, they might have costumes from various plays that they've put on before. Um, so yeah, so lots of our kind of extras, and we
Mm.
had extras in this movie, are from that world. And our costume designer and production designer, he's from that world.
Right.
So he had a lot of the costumes already or had the materials to make them, and he
Mhm.
also knew how to do them historically correct. Um, Not that we were in any particular time period, and that was again one thing that did help us. It's
Yeah.
not like we were recreating. This is August 1842, so
Yes.
everything has to be right. We were in a fantasy world.
Yeah. So you can get away with a little bit more.
Yeah, a bit more license. So the
Yeah.
costumes were from various periods of history, as long as they look like they fitted together.
Yeah. As long
And
as they're not from the now.
exactly in the locations as well. So we shot at Anne of Cleves House, which is down by Lewes near Brighton, and genuinely 500 years old and haunted.
Amazing.
And our lead actress saw the ghost whilst we were down there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so our lead actress Hannah got to set like one of the earliest, and so she went to the toilet area to get changed, and she came out and saw this old woman in a rocking chair, and then looked again and she was gone. And then she went upstairs to speak to the woman who was like looking after us, the woman, and she worked there full time, and she was looking after us on the shoot. And she said, "Oh, I've just seen something a bit strange down in the kitchen, the old kitchen area." And a woman behind the counter just looked her in the face and went, "Was it the old woman in the rocking chair?"
That's amazing. I want to go to this location now and find the old woman in
Yeah,
the chair.
it's a museum,
Right,
and you go, and but it's closed like 2 days a week, which is obviously when we shot.
right.
But yes, open to the public the rest of the time. So
Mm.
that was, we had to obviously be very careful there because
Mm.
everything was really 500 years old.
Yeah,
So we couldn't, gaffers normally like to drill a hole in things and stick a light stand through something and
yeah. None of
whatever.
that.
Super careful with all of that. But obviously it gives you incredible production value.
Yeah.
Um, that would be very difficult, in a set build or
I feel like
something.
as an actor as well, when you are in a full costume
Mm.
that takes you out of the now, and when you're in a house like that, like a period house, it really helps you get into the character as well because you feel like you're not, this is not your normal everyday life.
100%. I mean, it is hard, but it is a very rewarding thing to do this kind of thing because
Mm.
when you're shooting like a contemporary film and you're in an Airbnb somewhere and everybody's dressed normally, it's fun, but it's not like being in a castle and
Yeah.
somebody comes past in a knight in armor and then someone comes past in a ball gown and
Yeah.
then you're like, okay, now we're making a movie.
Now we're making a movie.
Now we're really, creating a world here.
Yeah. Which is so
So
much fun.
yeah, so that was genuinely 500 years old, but obviously like Tudor. Then we shot in one of those sort of educational villages where they have different houses recreated from the different
Okay.
periods,
Yeah.
and they have
I know what
school
you mean.
trips and stuff. So they had these Saxon houses.
Hmm.
So large differences in kind of the periods we were doing, but they all looked old,
Yeah.
and they all kind of fitted the vibe. So yeah, it's finding mainly things that already exist,
Yeah.
that you can shoot on, and yeah, museums, those kind of living museums are a good
Mhm.
place to find locations and costumes and actors because often they might have their own people who
Uh-huh.
perform anyway. So it's hard, but there's little tricks and stuff that you can do to kind of give yourself a fighting chance
Yeah.
making fantasy and period.
So did you direct Rumpelstiltskin or were you a producer on that?
I mean, yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Okay, so you're both because I
But
know you're making the switch from directing into producing.
yes, so yes, just to kind of give a little bit backstory, yeah, I'm a writer director, really. That's kind of always what I wanted to do. Um, but then, in an effort, partly due to COVID, when everything fell apart in COVID, and then partly due to, kind of take a bit of control of my own destiny back. I became a producer a few years ago now and set up my own production company, Paranoid Android Films. And so we've done 4 movies so far. I've directed 3 of them,
Hmm.
produced all of them, but all the ones that I directed as well, I co-produced because
Right.
that's too much work for one
Yeah.
person and one brain space. So Punch and Rumpelstiltskin, both co-produced by Becky.
Hmm.
Her working name is Rebecca Matthews. She's incredibly prolific producer, incredibly talented
Hmm.
producer. Um, and the way that we would work it is we would both produce up until the day of the shoot.
Hmm.
And then on the shoot, I was director and
Right.
she was producer. And then the
Yeah.
second we wrapped, we were back to doing both jobs.
Both.
Um, because yeah, whilst you're trying to direct, you don't want questions about when lunch is and
No.
the van stuck in the mud and all of which happened, and the lunch has been burnt, which happened on Rumpelstiltskin, and all these little things. And yeah, questions about character motivation and camera movement come to me.
Hmm.
Questions about lunch and transport go to Becky because it has to, because otherwise
Yeah.
your head would explode, and my brain could not cope with it.
No.
Um, So yeah, I like producing and kind of putting the projects together and bringing a good team together, but
Hmm.
I can't direct and produce at the same time. And then the one film I haven't directed is called Custom,
Hmm.
and that is coming out late summer, and that is directed by a good friend of mine called Tiago Teixeira,
Hmm.
um, brilliant Brazilian guy who now lives in London, and it was his feature debut. But he's done a lot of short films, which people might have seen on the horror circuit, and that was
Right.
his directorial debut, and that's coming out soon. So that one, because I wasn't directing, I could produce on set.
Right.
Um, because I only had the lunch and the parking to worry about,
Yeah.
and he had camera and actors and everything to sort out.
So tell me about fairy dust.
Yes, so Fairy Dust is the new project that we're working on.
Yeah.
And again, that one is one that I'm producing, not directing. So that is written and directed by a guy called Chad Michael Ward,
Mhm.
and he's an American guy who lives in Sweden at the moment. And he used to make all these music videos in LA. Incredibly kind of talented artist and photographer.
Yeah.
And that came about because it was another COVID thing. Him and During COVID, he made all of these incredible paper mache masks. And then him and his wife went out to the woods and shot these masked creatures wandering around the woods. And I saw the footage on, I think it was Twitter or Instagram, and I was like, wow, that was amazing. What film is that from? And he was like, it's not from a film. It's just
Just the
three
fun.
minutes, 3 minutes of messing around in the woods. And I was like, but it should be a film. And he's
Mm.
like, yeah, I know it should be a film, but I don't have a producer, I don't have a script, I don't have anything. And I was like, well, if I'm that excited to see it,
Mm.
and it's got this kind of 80s vibe, his work. So anyone who wants to check this out, check it out. Sure there'll be links at the end of this.
I will put links on, yes.
All the links on. So if you click on the link for that, you'll be able to see the concept video that Chad shot, and it's got this kind of beautiful 80s kind of labyrinth, dark crystal, that kind of vibe to it. So I was like, okay, how do we make this a film? So he went away and wrote a script for it. I said I'd produce it, and we're looking to shoot it in England at the end of the summer.
Right.
Um, but we're doing a crowd fund for that one.
Yes.
And I'm not very experienced in crowdfunding. It's not something I've done for a while, but it just felt right for this project. Partly because it's too weird and quirky and unique to kind of get funding from distributors or something.
Hmm.
They're all looking for the IP, Rumpelstiltskin, Winnie the Pooh, Popeye, Mickey Mouse, all of that stuff is what they're into at the moment. Whereas this is an original story,
Yeah.
completely new characters.
Which I
Um,
love. I'm excited by it because it's
yeah,
different from what I've
yeah,
seen.
there's definitely an audience for it, but it's something that has going to have to work harder to find its
Yeah.
audience. Something that's based on, Rumpelstiltskin or Mr. Punch, for example. And he already had this proof of concept, which was
Hmm.
beautiful. Um, so we already had kind of stuff to show people to go, look at this, it's beautiful. We want to make a whole film
Hmm.
around it. And so he's hand making all these new masks for it. We're doing a crowdfunder, and there's the usual kind of perks on there, digital downloads or Blu-rays, but you can also get these masks as well if you want.
Right.
Uh,
So
Kind of one of a kind, original handmade masks, which are beautiful. Um,
amazing.
and can be
So
used in the film. So yes, check the links out after this, and obviously anyone who can spend any money would be very much appreciated. Um, and even if not, just kind of sharing it around, again, very much appreciated.
yeah,
Um,
we've had Aviana Snow on the show.
yes,
So she's actually in the cast, and I think Annabella Rich is in the cast. Am I right?
yes.
Yeah.
So Aviana's in there. Obviously, she's kind of very good at sort of physicality. She's
Mm.
got this kind of really tall,
Yeah, I think
slim.
she's like Nicole Kidman-esque. But
Exactly.
Nicole
So
Kidman, but more ethereal, like a more like
yeah,
fantasy Nicole Kidman. That's how I
exactly.
describe Aviana.
So yeah, so she's going to be kind of perfect for this, really. And Annabelle, someone that I've worked with briefly and is super lovely. And Chad had worked with her. She'd done a little voiceover for one of his shorts. So we were like, let's get her in because there's kind of two, apart from the lead, nearly all the other characters wear these masks.
Right.
It's sort of Alice in Wonderland thing. She
Mhm.
goes into, or Wizard of Oz thing, which goes to this fantasy world. The lead character goes into the fantasy world and meets all these weird and wonderful creatures, and they all wear masks. So there's kind of two stages of casting, and one is the physical characters,
Mhm.
and then there's one will be the voices, and it might be they're the same actors doing them, or
Yeah.
it might be set somebody else does the voice when we come to in post. And Joss, who plays Rumpelstiltskin, he's on board as well.
Right.
He's playing some of the creatures because he's a creature performer by trade. He was in the Tarot movie, which came out last year.
Right.
He played the devil in that, so that's kind of his thing. And so he's coming on board to do some creatures and also help the other performers with creature
Yeah.
movement because that's his thing. So I'm very excited. I mean, it's one of those things trying to make a fantasy movie on a tiny budget seems insane, but having done Rumpelstiltskin,
Mm.
with Chad having created, a lot of these, the hard bits himself in terms of the production design of these creatures and characters, I'm like, actually, yeah, we can do this. Um, and it is, and it's almost an antidote. I think Chad especially sees it as an antidote to this kind of very AI sort of
Mm.
world that we're getting, especially with fantasy stuff. It's so
Yeah.
easy to create fantasy things now with AI. And he's like, no, these creatures, some people have said these look like AI. And he's like, no, these are
They're actually masked.
real handmade physical masks
Yeah.
made by your own hands.
And I
And that,
think people, obviously, people will watch stuff that's AI, but I think people do prefer real effects, like real masks, like especially like anyone who's kind of watched the podcast, whenever I get feedback and they're talking about people's projects, they always prefer the real stuff.
oh, yeah. I mean, the horror audience is the audience that wants practical effects,
Yeah.
really. And would much rather see maybe a slightly ropey practical effect
Hmm.
than a really good CG one almost.
Yeah.
That kind of hardcore horror audience, people who go to the horror festivals and stuff, they'll want to see heads coming off and, you know, arms coming off, and they'll want to see creatures and they'll want those creatures to be practical, whether
Yeah.
they be puppetry or creature performers
Hmm.
or what have you, rather than CG. Um, So yeah, that is the audience that we're looking for, that kind of audience who value kind of those kind of practical effects and practical monsters, really.
Yeah.
Hark back to those. It's a sort of coming of age story as well, so it
Yeah.
kind of would fit into that. So hopefully the young audience will resonate with it because it's a coming of age story, and then the people who are older will go, "Oh yes, this reminds me of, Legend and
Mhm.
Kroll and all of those
Yeah.
incredible kind of 80s fantasy movies."
So it's quite fantasy, and obviously Rumpelstiltskin's been fantasy. Because I was going to ask you, like, if you didn't work in horror, what other genre would you like to work in? But you're kind of sort of fantasy crossover at the moment.
Yeah, moving it more into fantasy. I mean, it's always been one of those things I wanted to do, but thought, I couldn't on these budgets, but
Hmm.
tried it with Rumpelstiltskin, and thought this is great fun, really, because you are creating a new world.
Yeah,
I'd love to do sci-fi as well, actually.
taking you
Again,
back to your Star Wars dream.
exactly. I mean, yeah, just give me an episode of Star Wars to make. I doubt they would now. They'd look at my track record and go, no, this just makes horror movies. We can't have him scaring the kids. But yeah, my young son's massively into Star Wars now.
Right.
So that would be that would be good to do something, just something spacey, something fantasy, something space
Yeah.
opera. But that does feel expensive. But with, digital technology, things like the volume, there's ways and means. So I'm looking at it.
Ways and
Um,
means of doing it. So who do
yeah.
you think like has influenced your kind of style? Like directors or filmmakers that you were big fans of growing up?
Um, well, it was, I think, probably what we mentioned earlier. It was like the Evil Dead, so Sam Raimi, and then Peter Jackson, um, with Bad Taste and Brain Dead. Those were the ones that kind of showed me how anything was possible in a
Yeah.
very practical way. Filmmaking is problem solving. You kind of think of how we're going to do it, and then do it in the cheapest, kind of coolest way that you can think of, but without ever skimping on what can we do. If you think of Bad Taste, it's an alien invasion movie, and it took him 4 years to make. And he handmade those creature heads as well himself.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, those are kind of the earliest sort of inspirations. And now I take inspiration from everywhere. I mean, I'm a huge David Lynch fan. Um, and obviously was, very sad when he passed
Mm.
recently. I wouldn't say my work is particularly Lynchian, but I think what he did was push the boundaries of how film can represent the subconscious and
Mm.
dream logic and things like that. He understood the way that sound and picture can go together, and not necessarily just in a linear storytelling way. He understood how you could create mood and atmosphere and dream logic,
Mm.
which I think is incredibly powerful.
So what would you say your favorite decade was for horror?
Oh God. Um, I mean, I could pick one and then go, oh no, damn, no. I mean, I would have to say the 80s,
The
just
80s.
because I'm of a certain age, and that was my coming of age into horror.
Uh-huh.
I finished that decade at being 13, so yeah,
Yeah.
all of the classics from there, which are still going. Obviously, your Halloweens and your Nightmares on Elm Street, The Thing, that kind of thing. Even The Shining was 1980, wasn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd have to say that. I mean, I could pick my favorite films from all the other eras, but I think that was, the 90s didn't really pick up again until the late 90s.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a dirty word, I think, for the first half of the 90s.
Yeah.
Um, so you had films which are horror movies like Silence of the Lambs, but they didn't market them as horror movies. They didn't
No.
call them horror movies. Horror movies by that time had become this kind of schlocky thing.
Mm.
Um,
Until the late
which
90s, really, with the slasher revival.
exactly, and which obviously, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, they kind of referenced that, which was a sort of precursor to Scream.
Mm.
And we're just like, Freddy started off as scary, and then by the end of the 80s, he'd become a bit of a joke.
Mm.
So Wes Craven's New Nightmare was about, let's make Freddy scary again,
Right.
uh, which is great. And then that was also like a sort of dry run for Scream, really,
Yeah.
which off the second half of the 90s.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. The end of the 90s and the early part of the noughties was all very horror again, but glossy, kind of glossier than before.
yeah, glossier, that kind of glossier, I know what you did last summer
Yeah.
thing. And that's obviously what's kind of coming back round now. I think they're
Yeah,
doing
it was
a,
like high budgets with like, characters that had a little bit of comedy and a little bit of personality in them. I think the mix of the comedy and things like Scream without the jokes would have been a harder watch. But I think it was
yeah, yeah. I mean, I love Scream absolutely because I was, a fan of all the movies it was referencing.
mm,
And I studied film at university, and actually Scream 2 came out while I was at university, and I went to see it with all my film studies.
and it was about them making
And
a
we
film.
turned it on, and it was about film study students being murdered, and we were all like, ah!
I actually really like Scream too. I think it got a bad rap.
It's
Like people would
I,
seem not to like it, but I liked it. I've
I,
liked all of them actually.
yeah, they've all got something going for them, but for me, I think Scream 2 is almost as good as Scream 1
Mm,
because it is smart and it is clever and it's got just like three or four set pieces, like the one in the car where he's the police guy's in the dead in the front seat and they've got to climb out of the police car and they don't know where he's coming from. That's great. The bit in the radio station where she can't hear him, the
yeah.
opening scene in the cinema where he knows somebody's going to die because there's hundreds of people running
Hmm.
around. The ghost face must be that. Yeah, I think it's just got some really good set pieces, some really good kills in it.
It has.
It's
I'm
one
going
I
to
love.
finish off with a little rapid fire round for you because we're
Okay.
almost out of time. So I've got a few questions and you have to give me a quick answer. How's that sound?
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to
Under
put my questions
pressure
in front
now.
of me so I can.
Don't hold any of these against me.
Okay.
I'll think of a better answer, I'm sure, once I've
Okay.
finished. Yeah.
Slow burn or jump scare?
Oh God. Uh I'm gonna go jump scare.
Yes, I would have gone with
Because
that too.
I do love a slow burn, but if in my own work, I'm much more about let's just get to it. Let's
Yeah.
just get to the good stuff.
Okay. Zombies or vampires?
I'd have to say zombies because I've started out with zombies. They kind of gave me my first big break. Although I do still have a vampire project, The Vampires of Soho, which needs to be made.
Yes.
So at the moment, zombies.
Okay. What horror film do you think is overrated?
What horror film is
Yeah, one that
overrated?
everyone likes and you don't so much.
Um, I don't think it's so much overrated. I think it was a very good film. But I remember watching The Sixth Sense and being like, the twist was so obvious from the start.
All right.
Uh, and so when people were like watching it, going, "Oh my God, you will not guess it," I was like, after 5 minutes, well, of course he's dead. Nobody else is talking to him. Only the kid is talking to him.
I
So
didn't
that
guess it.
I don't think it's overrated because I think it's a very well put together film, a very well acted, very well written film. But for something that relies so much on the twist, I think it for me, it overplayed it, I think.
Which horror icon would you like to have a drink with?
Um, Real life one or fake one?
Or go for character and then go for actor.
Okay, I'm an actor. I'm gonna say you because I haven't seen you in a
Mhm.
long time. So
No.
we should have a drink with.
Yes.
We should have a drink again soon, and I'm sure we will. I can't. I'd love to. I think Freddy's just the most fun. I
Yeah.
think, in terms of, you know, so many of the other slasher killers don't have a lot to say for themselves. But I think you could have a good night out with Freddy. I think you could, get drunk, have some, a few laughs, it'll be
Okay.
fun.
Final one. Favorite horror movie of all time.
I get asked this a lot, and it's like picking your favorite child, but I only have one child, so that's
That's
easier.
easy.
Whereas I have 100 favorite horror movies, so it's very difficult to say that. But kind of gun, knife, baseball bat to the head, I would always say The Shining,
Okay.
because not only is it a great horror movie, it's Stanley Kubrick, it's Shelley Duvall, it's Jack Nicholson, it's Stephen King. Even though Stephen King hates that adaptation, it is people at the top of their game.
Hmm.
This is, Kubrick at the top of his game, Nicholson at the height of his powers, Stephen King in his kind of early work where it was horrible and raw and about alcoholism. This is everything. Not just a great horror movie, it's a great piece of cinema. And I met the Shining twins the other day, and they were lovely.
Oh, in Cannes.
No,
Oh.
it was at Elstree Studios. They had a little sort
Oh,
of event to celebrate the fact that Shining was shot at Elstree Studios.
okay.
So they had a few of the old cast there, no, a few of the old crew there, Stanley Kubrick's daughter, and the Shining twins, and they're in must be late 50s, early 60s now,
Hmm.
and that was the only thing they ever did. They were just two twins who were at a local school, and they got cast in this movie because they were twins, and so they've got
Amazing.
acted together. They've both got normal jobs and husbands and everything now, but they still dress alike. Well, they did here. And,
Oh,
yeah, super fun. And I was like, yeah, these guys are great. So I was like, just
amazing.
cemented The Shining as like my probably number one. But there's a
Amazing.
lot of others that I love too.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Have you got
No
plans for the
worries.
weekend? It's nearly the weekend, isn't it? It's Thursday as we're filming this. In my head it's Friday. You've still got another day of work.
Yeah, I don't know. I've just come back from the Cannes Film Festival where every day is like mental, and
Party.
it's every day is partying. So I'm resolutely not partying this weekend. I'm
Fair enough.
quiet night in, spending some time with the family and just kind of trying to get my head back in the game. And having a family just kind of put you back to the real world. You can come back from Cannes with your head in the clouds, and I'm a filmmaker, and then you come back and you have to do the school run. And you're like, okay, okay, yeah, the real world has to happen. I've got to put the bins out, all of that,
Yeah.
all of that brings you back and gives you a sense of perspective, really.
It's true. Thank you so much.
No worries, anytime, anytime.